Mr. CUMPHOBIECACK and the Leprechaun's Ball by Barry Dominic Graham and Hannah Helena Graham. Narrated by Peter Baker. This book is lovingly and profoundly dedicated to all those we love and to those we have loved and lost. Introduction. With family and friends in the forest of glee, we Mr. CUMPHOBIECACK chose to decree Ostara would be a fantabulous fest to celebrate all of by which they'd been blessed. The equinox ushered in beauties of spring, and all of the joys this sweet season could bring. 'Twas also the time of the Leprechaun's Ball, which is secretly held hind a charmed waterfall. Never before has a glumpet been asked, but this would soon change to a thing of the past. The Tale. Deep down in a dunny in Diddley Dell, where rainbows descend near an old wishing well, in a palace of crystal with bright golden walls, the Leprechaun King holds his Leprechaun Balls. Ostara has been the traditional fest to welcome the equinox, spring, and the rest, a time of great joy, with poteen and cognac, incredible treats, and much leprechaun crack. Forget-me-nots, bluebells, and daffodils bloom to herald the passing of wintry gloom. Chaffinches, nightingales, swallows, and swifts are merely a few of spring's beautiful gifts. The glumpets of glee planned a trip to the sea, for a visit with one of their kin, a CUMPHOBIECACK cousin who lives in a cave, with a hump and a permanent grin. Sarcastic and crude, with a bad attitude, all alone in a cliff he resides. He combs on the shore, finding flotsam galore, that is swept to the beach by the tides. His name is Cumwhump, a CUMPHOBIECACK chump, who is pitied by family in glee. They all have concurred that he's e'er been a turd, but a change may be what they would see. Once packed and prepared to confirm that they cared, all the glumpets of glee journeyed hence. In a cart pulled by badgers, a fox and a stoat, their adventure was soon to commence. Sadly, Mr. CUMPHOBIECACK's father and he had forgotten to wash down below. The heat makes their jollops smell pungent indeed, as the glumpet girls tiresomely know. After several hours, and despite holding flowers, the poor females then started to boke. For their sweet baby's sake, they all stopped for a break, now convinced that the infant could choke. As they washed in a stream, all the fish tried to scream, whilst the mammals and birds quickly fled. The water was foul as they shared the same towel, leaving both to be stinky instead. Refreshed and revived, now the group onward strived, until reaching an old wooden bridge. But naught could they know of the danger below, from a troll with two bottoms, called Midge. As they started to cross o'er the emerald moss that had grown on the ancient oak deck, with a grunt and a growl and a hideous scowl leapt a troll with two bums and no neck. It jumped onto the cart as it pushed out a fart, which smelled worse than a hot glumpet's nuts. Then, with warty pale skin, pointy ears, nose and chin, it spun round as it twerked both its butts. The CUMPHOBIECACK squealed at this demon to yield, as it bounced up and down in a rage. But then, out of the blue, fairy rescuers flew, bringing with them a magical cage. Wee Tam led the squad, as the Troll kicked and clawed, being ferried within the stockade. Once safely installed, the Spring Goddess was called, and the Troll was then elsewhere conveyed. Ostara then smiled, with the charm of a child, as she graciously faded away. The CUMPHOBIECACK family were bowed in respect, in a reverie, freed from the fray. Wee Tam's fairy family returned whence they came, after bidding a tender adieu. The CUMPHOBIECACKS, helped once again by their friends, had another misfortune come through. Onward they went, much relieved and content, until hearing the sounds of the sea. Very soon they arrived, overjoyed and revived, at the cliff where their cousin should be. They searched all around, till a ladder was found that descended down into a cave. Then Mr. CUMPHOBIECACK loudly called out as he leaned o'er the cliff-top to wave. A face then appeared, looking up as it jeered, unimpressed at now being disturbed. It was CUMWUMP indeed, as he dined on seaweed, very vexed and extremely perturbed. Amazed and surprised, he then soon realized he was looking at one of his kin. He climbed to the top in a simmering strop, whilst wearing his permanent grin. Mr. CUMPHOBIECACK reached out his hand there to help his weird cousin aloft. As they stood face to face, they then chose to embrace, then embarrassed, both spluttered and coughed. Introductions were made, and respects were then paid, until everyone felt at their ease. A picnic was laid in an ocean-view glade, as the gulls sailed above on the breeze. The Glumpets rejoiced, while their blanket got moist, due to baby CUMPHOBIECACK's pee. She gagaed and gooed, then she giggled and pooed, with a look of contentment and glee. Once Mum cleaned her rump, after taking her dump, little Candy CUMPHOBIECACK cried, but soon played with CUMWUMP, climbing high on his hump, where she laughed as her tears quickly dried. As sea mist rolled in, it was time to begin the uncomfortable journey back home. Pre-leaving the cliffs, they gave CUMWUMP some gifts of plum jam and sweet glee honeycomb. After poignant goodbyes under overcast skies, the CUMPHOBIECACKS then parted ways. CUMWUMP climbed back down to his home in the cave, having had the most special of days. Their cart trundled on until coming upon young Lucas, their leprechaun friend. He was tied up a tree, trying hard to break free, but unable to move or descend. Powerless to speak, except mumble and squeak, as his mouth had been gagged with his sock. He remained undeterred, and was luckily heard by his friends, who were speechless with shock. Mr. CUMPHOBIECACK jumped from his cart, and then started to climb up the tree, but slipped on a bug as it nibbled a slug that had 3 hairy legs and 1 knee. Falling back to the ground, with a strange squishy sound, poor Mr. CUMPHOBIECACK howled. 'Twas a pong-friddle-poo he had fallen into, which again left him stunned and befouled. The bug was irate that the slug dodged its fate, and that some of its bum-shell was cracked. So it jumped like a frog, while it snarled like a dog, as it viciously charged and attacked. Mr. CUMPHOBIECACK screeched like a girl as the bug bit the lobe of his ear. He then flew from the poo when it started to chew, as now gobbling was all he could hear. He hysterically ran, though devoid of a plan, as the bug chomped its way to his hole. But Effie, his wife, again ended his strife by whacking its bonce with a bowl. Now dizzy and dazed, with its eyes crossed and glazed, the bug dropped from his ear like a stone. As it wobbled away in befuddled dismay, a new hazard then made itself known. The reason that Lucas was tied up the tree had been due to a shape-shifting ghoul. It had made itself look like a young injured rook, that it may this young leprechaun fool. Its plan did succeed to delude and mislead, which then led to his capture with stealth. Reappeared as a ghoul, being nasty and cruel, it desired to steal leprechaun wealth. The majority know how the folk stories go about leprechaun crocks filled with gold, but only their king has a cauldron of bling that none other than he can behold. Poor Lucas was tied, then was poked, pricked, and pried, as the ghoul tried to winkle out facts. The CUMPHOBIECACK's cart had arrived at the part when the ghoul was preparing dire acts. The ghoul disappeared as the family's cart neared, quickly changing itself to a fly. With its plan now destroyed, it was more than annoyed as it buzzed its way into the sky. His mumbles, now heard by this family who cared, had ensured certain rescue at hand. Then Mr. CUMPHOBIECACK, in spite of his pains, climbed the tree as he'd formerly planned. He untied his friend, and then helped him descend, having foiled the foul ghoul's wicked scheme. As they mounted the cart to prepare to depart, they were shocked by a blood-curdling scream. Turned into a bear, the ghoul raged with despair as it raced with ferocious intent. The Glumpets of glee and young Lucas could see no escape from the harm that it meant. As they quivered with fright at this terrible sight, all the fairies returned once again. Ostara appeared, and the danger was cleared, as the ghoul could no longer remain. With the hope none would see, it changed into a flea as it jumped its way into the cart. Bewildered and scared at each other they stared, loath to search, knowing not where to start. This ghoul was no fool, as it jumped to the jewel that young Lucas concealed in his scants. All leprechauns own a small magical stone, which they keep in a nook in their pants. The jewel is a weapon to help when in strife, that a leprechaun never can lose. But Lucas would often forget it was there, and thus fail its protection to use. At least he'd remembered its use in the past, when the ogre and goblin attacked. The spirits of Yule added fuel to his jewel, till those villains were mangled and cracked. Still looking around for a sign to be found of this ghoul which was now lost from sight, the goddess Ostara spread open her arms, and the cart was engulfed in white light. The ghoul, still a flea, could now no longer see, as the light was too bright for its eyes. As it fumbled about, it could not figure out which direction would lead to its prize. Eventually reaching the leprechaun's shorts after creeping about in his breeks, the mystic white glow made the ghoul start to grow, till its hairy legs tickled his cheeks. Lucas then shrieked, as great havoc was wreaked with the big furry flea near his jewel. So he groped without care down his green underwear, until grasping a hold of the ghoul, whipping it out while he shimmied about, young Lucas extracted the flea. Without hesitation he tossed it away, while it bubbled, unable to see. Before it could change into something more strange, the brave fairies then captured the ghoul. Ostara retracted her brilliant white light, while young Lucas made use of his jewel. With Ostara's aid, the vile ghoul was waylaid, and its sorcery blocked and constrained. It would stay as a flea, the same size as a bee, with its magical powers ever drained. It hopped in a hole that was home to a vole, whilst attempting to curse all its foe, but decidedly doomed it was promptly consumed, leaving naught but one chewed, hairy toe. The Green Man then appeared, whom all creatures revered, to ensure all was safe and secure. The goddess of spring ever nest on the wing, once bestowing her blessings so pure. Without further ado, all the fairies withdrew, and wee Tam flew to bring up their rear. The Glumpets of glee and young Lucas agree that they ne'er really needed to fear. At the end of the day, and whatever the fray, truest friends and protectors abound. With their help e'er at hand, everywhere in the land, their sweet succour and love will be found. Whilst travelling home, wee Nathaniel the gnome, with old Aggie, a friendly banshee, met up with the Glumpets while sat on a knoll, on the road to the forest of glee. With adventures detailed of how evil had failed, the proud Glumpets and friends approached glee. Young Lucas continued to diddly-dell, while the rest returned home and had tea. The following morn came the sound of a horn, being followed by clapping and cheers. 'Twas the Leprechaun King, with a large shiny ring, and an entourage verging on tears. Now standing in awe at the sight that they saw, the CUMPHOBIECACks barely could speak. They bowed with respect as the king stood erect, in an aura of regal mystique. Mr. CUMPHOBIECACK, now beckoned forth, was amazed at such pageant and swank. Then all was revealed as he solemnly kneeled, as the king spoke to honour and thank. For saving young Lucas from danger and grief, the Leprechaun King did bestow a magnificent ring, and an invite to bring to his balls any Glumpet who'd go. Never before had a Glumpet been asked to enjoy any Leprechaun balls, but all were soon gathered at Diddly-Dell, in the palace with bright golden walls. So, with tales all now told, may the future unfold purest joys in this wondrous domain. The CUMPHOBIECACK family will cherish each day, with all fears lost like tears in the rain. The end. Ostara blessings to all. This has been Mr. CUMPHOBIECACK and the Leprechaun's Ball by Barry Dominic Graham and Hannah Helena Graham. Narrated by Peter Baker. Copyright 2019 by Barry Dominic Graham and Hannah Helena Graham. Production copyright 2019 by Barry Dominic Graham and Hannah Helena Graham.